Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Motherland, Fort Salem. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we're dealing with the aftermath of picking up pretty much a little bit after the events of the season 1 finale, and Adele as well as Tally are lamenting over what happened. At the time they thought, that Rael and Abigail were dead. And obviously you have Alder feeling, Sarah feeling the most responsible. I think that's what for one, some of her biddies died in the process. So when they died, it's like losing a part of herself, especially because we know that that link is so psychically connected that so she felt those deaths and that, but also two people under me or other, two still fledglings and all of this are dead, and she feels responsible, But also it's dealing with the fact is that the Camarilla are back, knowing that your main enemy that you thought was gone centuries ago is back. It's just all that hitting her at once, And obviously when they get back, Abigail's mom is not happy at all, blaming her. It's she's already lost so much, lost family. She didn't even realize she had about the other bellwethers that were out there. But now you're telling me now my daughter is gone, my one and only child, the last of our bloodline. It's your daughter did this willingly, but obviously for her, it's I mark you. So it was almost kind of putting a little bit of, I guess, a family curse on her to a certain extent, or mark you for just screw you for what you've done to our family. But also, you have Anacostia being there looking devastated, because it's because I think Anacostia not only is a mentor and obviously their superior officer, but she's not necessarily a mother, but I think she's almost like a big sister. And it's watching these kids she cares so much about, not only to know that Abigail and Rayo are gone, but even looking at Tally's situation of being a biddy now, she knows what that means. It's being a biddy means kind of your life is over. It's all about kind of you being there for Sarah, and it's just all her girls, she asked them to promise to come back, and it's now look at all of them. They're two of them are potentially gone, and the other one's life is kind of going too. So it's she kind of feels in a way she kind of lost all of them. So. But obviously, there's reports coming into Alder as well as the other council of people she's talking to about obviously what Rael and Abigail did. Granted, they are manipulating weather on a level that no one's seen kind of before. But it's whatever it is, it's dying down, but it's on the move. And we kind of pick up with Rael and Abigail, and it turns out the blast radius has died down, and I love the whole thing of keep calling me shitbird every 2 seconds and it'll stop being so special. I don't want it to be so. I want it to continue being special. I'm oh look, it's so dope to think about where they started in season 1 and where they are right now. They're so ride or die. I love that. But then they discover a body covered in plants and stuff like that, which is interesting because the way that body looked, it almost looked like the earth was kind of growing from it. It looked like funguses and stuff that were growing from. We don't know what it was, what necessarily happened. But Abigail, well, because we saw it at the end of season 1 when they were walking, they were kind of killing everything around them to a certain extent. It just seemed like they were more so reworking everything. It was interesting, but for Abigail, it's we did this, and she's when we get back, we have to tell someone. But Rael's no, just for us to end up on an experimental slab, people are going to want to poke and prod us to figure out what we know. Do you really trust Alder with this? But for Abigail, she's a loyal soldier, being no, we're part of the army, we have to tell somebody about this. They end up some rangers end up finding them, but it's right, we don't know if you're spree wearing someone else's face, so you're coming with us. Before all this, despite everything she's going through, Abigail's mom is I'm a soldier first before I'm a mother. So it's right, the spree, we learned that because we had learned previously in the episode, because, Scylla was asking okay, why didn't you tell me? It's I didn't want you to know about, Rael being my daughter, but it's now I know, I was on a personal mission. I thought I was on a mission for the greater scheme of things for the spree, which I don't know whether Ray's mom knows how special she is, or whether it's a situation where it's like, no, she just wanted her daughter back. She probably found out her daughter was mixed up on this. It's like, no, I need to get her from being like a part of this, because she didn't believe in that anymore. Like, she was a part of the army, and she got tired of it, and it's just like, this is just no way to live. Just being put on a front lines to be sacrificial for humans, especially humans who hate you. I think maybe that's the extent of that, but basically we find out like the bellwether plan, because that's what I was thinking, like, oh, Scylla had no idea that was going to go down, or maybe she did. I can't remember what I said during season 1 review, but at the very least for her, it's like, in this case, this episode, she's saying like, oh, I had no idea, so like that means there were plans. But for her, it's like, no, we had nothing to do with it. I was like, whoa. So I guess the Camarilla, as we now know, can by taking their vocal cords and using tech or whatever, or magic of some kind, they're able to rework it and able to utilize it. So they were able to make that attack on the bellwether like wedding seem like a spree attack, when in actuality it wasn't. Because that was also a conversation last episode, like, yeah, the spree normally don't attack other witches, going to this point, but obviously we now know it was a Camarilla after doing all this. And now it's like, because it turns out Ray's mom was meeting, like, it's like, all right, we just did our thing, ha ha ha, like, it's Ray's mom as well as other hierarchy members of the spree, because it's interesting, they're individual cells, but there has to be some hierarchy, and it seems like there was a good chunk of the leaders there, and it turns out there was a Camarilla agent and ends up killing everyone else. And the way Ray's mom was saying, like, oh, like, it wiped out like half the leadership. So I was like, wow, so there's not that many leaders, but though, those were people she knew too. So it's heartbreaking, because it's like, right, these were people, that she's known forever, believed in, and now they're gone, because now it's like she knows their ancient enemy is back. Like, we need to put off our issues with the army. Like, that's a fight for another day. We need to wipe out the Camarilla, because they're coming for us all. Spree, army, witches alike. They want all witches dead. So there's also the interesting development where we find out, we meet the vice president and like his daughter singing, and she starts melting glass behind her. So it's like, so he finds out she's a witch and she didn't know. But that's interesting, because it's like, right, like, and one of the people with Sarah was like, hey, imagine going your entire life and never knowing, because like every other witch is from a bloodline where it's like, oh no, you grow up knowing you're a witch, knowing your bloodline, your history. It's like, oh, she didn't know, which the vice president and Sarah sit down and talk later on. And obviously you can tell he's not a fan of this witch thing, because he's like, one of you, and it's like, why do you have to say that with such disdain in your voice? And even Sarah being like, yeah, she might be one of us, So it's like, I mean, to be fair, like, we see, like, the way, like, how the president talked to Sarah and just kind of treated witches last season. It's more so like, you serve us, which is super messed up to look at, but I guess because of the Accords, that's technically how things work. Technically, witches serve humans in the sense of, like, right, you're here to fight the battles and fight the wars that we kind of call you upon. So I think that element of kind of, I mean, once again, that's kind of the whole argument. You went from one set of shackles to another. And that's why the Spree's kind of all about their thing. But there is such disdain in just the way they treat witches. And for him to find out, like, for him, it's like, I'm trying to understand it. So in men, there is powerful work, but it doesn't pass down to their children. So when they're tracking witchhood, they follow the mother bloodline. So, but I guess, like, so it's like, how does this happen? It means that, like, your wife knew on some level that she was a witch. Either she avoided taking the oath, was kind of a big no-no, which I'm wondering, I guess he didn't know about that. But it's like, everyone does it for different reasons. It's like, maybe she's just someone that didn't believe in the cause or something like that. Oh, we don't end up finding out that she was actually a spree agent before she died. We never find out the circumstances around her death or whatever. But for, like, Sarah's like, right, we're gonna have to test your daughter to see if she is a witch, and if she is, she's gonna have to immediately start martial arts training. And obviously he's like, can you promise me you'll keep my daughter safe? It's like, yeah, we'll look after her, because even though, yeah, she's the daughter of the vice president, it applies to all witches, no matter how higher up, everyone else has to fall in line with that rule. She's no exception, because he was trying to skate around and be like, oh, she's my daughter, so she doesn't have leeway. No, When it comes to this witch draft, like if you're a witch, you're automatically signed up for this when you're the right age, when you're like 18 or older. So it's like, yep, she's a part of this. So that's gotta accept it. So they do check it out later on. They do test her, and it turns out she is one of them. So they need to, all witches need to come together, especially at this time with the ancient enemy returned and everything. But the moment like the vice president was there looking at it, you could tell like he's not too happy about it. You know, understandably, like not everyone's happy. I mean, look at how far Tally's mom went out of her way to try to make sure that Tally didn't sign up. So you know, his daughter doesn't seem like she's so against it like he is, but you know, makes you wonder on some level, did his wife actually tell him, and he was kind of hoping no one would know, but sadly there was video cameras in the church and everything, so it's kind of out. You know, he kind of had, there was no way avoiding it. No, so like obviously now that Sarah is aware, so he probably knew, he probably just kept it from his daughter. So regardless, obviously, you know, you have Sarah talking to Tally and saying like, you're right, you can, like, it's like, wait, did I do something wrong? It's like, no, you did something exceptional. Like when I needed you, you were there, you know, so if you want to, I can offer you something, a way out of it. She's like, no, like I made the choice to, it's like, yes, but usually biddies are trained. I mean, the last biddy, is that really necessarily the truth? I mean, I guess, because it's like, you people who are next in line to become biddies, like the last one was Devin last season, right? Wasn't that her name? Like, was she? I mean, she's still fairly young, but I guess it's like you're a potential candidate, and I guess it's like, right, it's your time now. So I guess they are always aware. That was just interesting to know, like, oh, like you're, like they know in advance. It's not like, oh, we pick a random student. It's like, no, like this is prepared ahead of time. Like you have to have certain qualities and stuff like that. I wonder would Talia fit the bill anyway? I think she does. But it's usually like you have to prepare yourself for that. So because of the extenuating circumstances, she was offering Tally a way out of this. But Tally was kind of like, no, I'm not. But it's like, no, just think about it. But then they immediately get to news about Rael and Abigail being alive. And the moment to come back, and Abigail's mom being like, I'm so proud of you. You might be the greatest bellwether birth from this line. And for her, it's like, I've been given this second chance. I'm not going to waste it. So I think we're definitely going to see some advancements in how their relationship is developed. Like, they were already working on that last season, but I think we're definitely, having thought that her daughter was gone and just where things were between them, I think for her, this is an opportunity to kind of mend a lot of fences, like a lot of issues between her and Abigail. I even love her hugging Rael, because it's like, oh my God, like, you know, I'm sure you were a big part in making sure my daughter came back to me. So I thought that was beautiful, despite their issues, because Rael still was like, oh yeah, you're the reason why my mom died. It was like, well, your mom's alive and she's working with the spree. She's one of many head honchos of the spree, in fact. So take that how you will. That's going to be complicated, because it's like, right, you fell in love with someone, Scylla, who wasn't who you thought she was. She was spree. Now to find out, oh, your mom's a spree too. Once again, that's going to be a complicated thing. All the people in your life that you care about end up not being who you thought they were. Your mom was someone else different, but like her experiences in the army under all of this shifted her. So I think that has to kind of be considered. But Sarah does reward Tally by like letting her go, and it's interesting to look at that. Like, you were literally like untangling the psychic knots, and it's like, yeah, this is a knot, they're untangling it. Even Sarah said there would be complications, because it's not something that really happens. It's possible, but who knows what the ramifications of it can be. But luckily, Tally is back to herself, you know, and it's like, she wakes up, she's like, oh my God, I thought you guys were dead. We thought you were old, you know, and they're back together again. It's just like, yeah, them hugging it out. It's like, we're not just unit. They're not just like friends. They're not just a unit. They're sisters. And I think it's so dope. And we obviously get a little more insight into what it's like being a biddy. It's like, on a surface level, we all know, like, you know, what Sarah's thinking, but on like a deeper level, like memories and stuff like that, we don't have access to that. We'll get to that later, but so, but she's like, it's basically like, oh, you're like being in a car with all the biddies. It's kind of like being with Connected. It was like being in a car with all the biddies, like just constantly on a road trip together. It was kind of like how she was describing it. So that just kind of never, it was like being on a road trip just never ends, surrounded with all these people in the same car. But then like Rael and Abigail bring up the fact is that they were the bomb that went off, but it's like, Rayo still doesn't want to tell Alder, but interesting enough, Tally is like, well, what's that mean? It's like, whoa, look at you getting all defensive. It's like, yeah, like what was it, episode 10? You were all just kind of like, the moment you found out, Alder basically put you in that position where you killed innocent civilians. But for her, like being like hearing that having that conversation with Alder in the finale, and then also becoming a biddy, gave her a different perspective on her, of her being like a woman who is always trying her best. She may make mistakes, might not do stuff that people agree with, but she is trying to do what she believes is best for everyone. So, but it's like, Abigail is like, we need to tell. If we're not going to tell her, who are we going to tell? And Rayo's like, well, we could potentially tell no one. It's like, we need to, because especially, it's like, she pieced it together, like, the people who attacked them to Camarilla, she's like, that's the same, like, equipment and stuff like that, stopping our work from, well, our voices, our songs from working, like, that was the Camarilla at the wedding, so, like, they're responsible, and we're going to need this power of ours if we're going to fight them, especially considering they have the power to block your voices and everything anyway, so... They do show it in the recap at the beginning, but that thing Rael touched, it still like was on her fingertip. We never found out fully what the hell that was, because the last time we checked it was being examined, but I'd assume it had to have something to do with, like, because it is about, like, once again, it's like, it's like a fungus or a mushroom, which Scylla did bring up early on in the season, like, the necro, like, the whole thing about mushrooms being connected to the underworld. So, like, maybe in the moment Rayo died, whatever that was activated. So in that moment, it, like, boosted their powers like crazy, because they were both on the verge of death, and mushrooms have to deal with death and stuff like that. Like, I think that was her kind of touching the other side. So maybe something filled them in that moment when they were on the verge of crossing over to the other side, dying together. I don't know. I'd assume, like, that has to play some part in it. Like, Rayo was already powerful to begin with. I think there was something there, but we might be dealing, like, anime referencing it up. There might be a Ninetales, like, amplifier, whereas, like, Naruto on his own is actually stupid strong. I mean, when you compare, like, when you count in who his father is and who his mother is, him having the level of chakra he has, I'm going on a huge tangent, but Kakashi was always like, Naruto on his own, his chakra naturally doubles mine, but there's always a fraction of his chakra always being used to seal away the Ninetales, so he's never always fighting at full strength. But also, it's like, he secretly has the Ninetales as a multiplier. Like, I'm wondering if that thing on Rael's finger was a multiplier. She's already crazy strong, but that just acted as a multiplier already to what she's already dealing with. Like, stacks on stacks of buffers, essentially. So ultimately, when it does come down to talking to Alder, it's like, right, remembering everything, and it's like, all right, let's spill the beans. The bomb, that was us. Rael kind of nodded like, all right, tell her. And it's like, they're like, whoa, like, okay, so they've got that figured out, and Abigail's like, right, if we use this tool, like, if we learn to master this, it could be a great asset, which even Sarah agrees, but, because Abigail's like, I want to know more about the Camarilla, and it's like, the Camarilla, I say Camarilla, the Camarilla, and Alder's like, you will in time, but focus on your training, and then we'll get to that. There's definitely a complicated history there for her to be like, rather than just being like, yeah, this was our enemies who hunted us for years, it's like, no, like, Sarah must have, like, a particular history with them, because she says she wiped them out, like, 200 years ago, but you're like, there's still got to be something more to that. The fact is, you don't want Abigail to know, but everyone else is just okay with it, so that's why I'm like, I'm wondering, could it be like the Camarilla? Like, could they be former witches that were basically stripped of their witchhood? So in some extent, it's weird to think that. I think they are just regular, like, witch hunters, but part of me was wondering, like, what if they're an ancient line of witches that were just like, you know what, like, they went buck wild and had to be like Alder, as well as maybe some other witches, but maybe an Alder in particular thought she wiped out that bloodline, but they're still alive and well, potentially. I mean, because it's probably like, much like the regular witches, there are so many different family bloodlines. Maybe the Camarilla works the same way. Like, maybe it's a group of, like, much like the Spree, they're all from different, like, bloodlines and stuff like that. So what if, like, the Camarilla are the same way? Like I said, I'm currently throwing that out there. That's probably not the case. They probably are just regular humans, but it just seemed like there's definitely more to their story that Alder knows, that everyone else maybe knows about, and they're just keeping hush-hush about. We'll have to wait and see. Then you got Adil and Abigail's reunion. He's like so happy to see her because he actually was talking to his sister about staying, but she was like, "No, we need to go find a new home." It's like, is this really about Abigail being back? And he's like, "Yeah, but also like I'm just tired of running." He wants to have one place, like just have not be the nomads that they are. It's like, I want to settle down and make a place our home, not just like constantly on the run. If we stay here, we can be protected. There will be people who help us. But for her, it's like she doesn't trust Alder and everything about this whole like military thing. Like she doesn't trust it, you know? So, but it's like at the very least we need to weigh our options. But even to the point that she's even convincing Rael, it's like, "Can you get my brother, convince my brother, I need you helping cure my brother of like being here." And she's like, "Oh, it seems like he's happy to be here." It's like, "Yeah, but this isn't where he belongs." Which is interesting because Abigail was saying like, "Yeah, it's not just like sex with Adil. It's not just like a power up thing like it was last season with the boys." It's like, no, it seems like it's something deeper. She's almost like, it's almost like destiny, like it was meant to be. And I'm like, huh. I wonder, I'm curious about that. Which, when they did, do their thing, like the earth started quaking a little bit, and you're like, oh, it starts sending out ripples. Like, oh, is she technically doing that by herself? But I guess maybe because her and Rael are connected still, like anything she's feeling, once again, it's like, it's not just Rael that has the buffer because they have like intertwined themselves. Like I think they're forever intertwined, very similar to the Tally thing. And I think because of that, like, Abigail's constantly in modifier mode in the sense of like her powers are constantly getting the boost, you know? But Tally talks. I love Tally like checking her boobs and everything. Like, yeah, everything in the right place. Even Alder being like, is everything in the right? It's like, oh yeah, it's good. She's like, it's weird to say it's only been like a day, but I miss you. It's like, right, like that connection. It's it's going to feel like you've lost a child or a mother. Basically saying like that feeling will never fully go away. It'll always be there on some level. But Tally's like, no, I'm all about that. Sarah's kind of like, yeah, I kind of have no choice about it. But finding out like, oh God, you guys were responsible for the earthquake and everything, and it's just once again seeing them all together like that. It's like, because even Rael kind of suggesting, because even I was about to say like, whoa, are you kind of got. In a weird way, do you have hots for Teach in the sense that like, oh, is Tally attracted to her? It runs probably deeper than that. It's on like probably every cell in her body and her mind are just like so intertwined. It's like it's not just like an attraction thing. It's like, right, we were kind of one for a moment, and it's like you, other than that older thing, like you can never get that close to another person like that. So it's like it's weird, a connection you can't quite shake, so. But I do appreciate, Anacostia showing up. It's like, give me your medals, and they're like, what do we do now? And she rewards them, and just like, oh my gosh, they're so excited because I guess it's like, right, they're I don't know if that's kind of like a war college thing or whether it's like, right, you're Alder's problem now, because like I guess it's like I wasn't quite sure what the rank up or reward was, but regardless. She's like, yeah, so the good thing about it is you're no longer my issue, you're Alder's issue, but still it's like, she loves them. She was heartbroken when she thought they died, so she cares very deeply for these kids, So I thought that was kind of sweet and beautiful. Rael talking to her dad, because Adil's sister gave her back her mom's charm. And it's like, I thought I lost it, but it was brought back to me. She's like, yeah, like that charm is kind of like a representation of your mom's love. Like she loves you so much that no matter, that charm is always going to find its way back to you. It's like, oh yeah, what about that girl you're into? And I was like, yeah, that didn't work out. But her dad was like, well, her loss, she's missing out on something great, Obviously that's a complicated thing because Anacostia still hasn't told Rael about everything. It's like, right, which I didn't talk about that. Anacostia was kind of listed. I don't know how much of that conversation she was able to catch. I don't know whether it's just like she was watching or whether she was actually able to hear it. Who knows? But they've kind of had to go dark because like that house was burnt, so they had to scatter. But they also have to do their best to find the Camarilla because like there's a place where a spree attack went down like 6 years ago. As like, why are all these people gathered? Which I was like, that's kind of a weird question considering. But I guess it's like, why are they gathered here now? Because this maybe isn't the anniversary, or maybe it is the anniversary. But it's like there's one particular guy talking because he's spurring everyone along by being like, oh, like the Spree are allowed to do whatever they want to, hurting unarmed civilians, and what does the army do? Nothing. And now he's trying to twist it into maybe they're not doing anything because they're trying to protect their own. You know, we can't rely on these witches to go after these other witches because, like, right, these are their people, that this is their kind. And it's like, once again, seeing it with such disdain. So it's like, right, like, we can't trust that they'll do what's right for us. So we're, you know, and obviously Ray's mom is telling Scylla, like, right, we got to find patient 0 because hate spreads like a disease. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see where that ultimately ends up going. But other than all of that, at the end, we have Tally's nightmare. It seems like she was able to go into Alder's memory, and then they were surrounded. And I don't know whether, like, I'm assuming that, like, the enemy they're being attacked by, I'm like, is that the Camarilla? I say Camarilla. Camarilla. I keep saying that differently, like, every time. I'm sorry. I was wondering if that was them attacking. Then, like, obviously all those giant bugs, I was like, those are big, juicy bugs, dude. Like, size of a person's leg. I was like, that's gnarly, dude. And obviously for Tally, it's like, I'm here, but no one else could see, but it was a memory. And so it's like, okay, so in the process of, like, because it doesn't seem like she necessarily, I mean, we're unaware. I mean, to be fair, Tally was only a biddy for a short amount of time. But the fact is that it doesn't seem like any other biddy has access to Sarah's memories. It seems like she's able to kind of lock them out. But I think at that moment, like, Sarah, because that was also a thing too. It's like, does Alder really never eat? It's like, nah, like, love is her fuel, or, you know. But it seemed like she wasn't sleeping because I guess, like, she's drowning in, like, nightmares and dreams. Like, now that the enemy is back, it got her thinking about the past. And it makes me wonder, were the other biddies able to see that, or was Tally able to see that? Because at some point in time during the coupling of the psychic link, some other stuff got connected, because she did say, like, that connection will eventually die down, that longing and missing, but it will exist in its own shape or form. But so that's why I'm wondering, like, is Tally's circumstance because Tally has very unique abilities in that she has a very strong sight. Like, her ability of, like, her ability of knowing, and her ability to see what, like, even, you know, during basic training, like, she was always, her skill of sight was bigger than anyone else's. So part of me wonders, is that in conjunction with being a biddy, like, did all that coming together turn into that? So I don't know. But whatever it is, it's not just a dream or just a memory. It was so real that it affected her physically. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this is the aftermath of being a biddy where the others would feel the same way, or is it because they were uncoupled that, like I said, some wires got crossed and now it's reacting like that, or could it be that in conjunction with just Tally's natural ability of sight, like manifesting it like that? A lot of questions. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this to potentially get some answers. It's definitely going to be interesting. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.